promoting dialogue.
It's midday in Dakar, 1 p.m. in Abuja. Good afternoon, and many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and worldwide on wadr.org. Welcome to Newslink. Here are the top stories. President Bola Tinubu, ECOWAS chairperson, calls for intensified efforts to drive the organization's economic integration agenda.
For now 6 consecutive years, the community levy remittances from the member states have been declining. This year, as of 30 October, the community institutions received only 40% of the approved funds from the community levy, thereby hindering the implementation of the community work program.
Analysts in Ghana express mixed reactions to the new composition of the country's parliament.
It's very difficult to get members of the ruling party to be very active in holding their own to account. I just hope that we are going to see something different here.
The Nigerian junta enters a legal battle with an international media for allegedly inciting genocide in the country. And a new report on illicit financial flows in Africa says that the continent loses $90 billion every year. Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
Here is Abdullahi Hassan with Newslink.
Many thanks for joining our broadcast and welcome to our listeners across the sub-region and beyond. This edition of Newslink begins in Nigeria as President Bola Ahmed Tinubu and the ECOWAS chairperson has called on member states to intensify efforts in creating a conducive environment for private sector growth, emphasizing its pivotal role in driving the region's economic integration agenda. Speaking through Nigeria's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Yusuf Tuga, at the 93rd Ordinary Session of the ECOWAS Council of Ministers in Abuja, Tinubu highlighted the need for deliberate strategies to boost intra-regional trade. WADA's Usman Umar reports.
In his opening remarks, President Tinubu urged member states to capitalize on the existing frameworks such as the ECOWAS Trade Liberalization Scheme (ETLS) and the ECOWAS Investment Code. He also called for the modernization of border posts, elimination of non-tariff barriers, and the enhancement of joint border management processes to foster deeper economic collaborations.
I commend the ECOWAS management on their recent efforts on humanitarian interventions in our member states, which have provided relief to our populace in times of need. My commendation also goes to the staff of various institutions and agencies that have been instrumental in coming up with such laudable initiatives that positively provide succor to our populace.
The president of the ECOWAS Commission, Omar Ali Toure, acknowledged progress in regional integration efforts but noted that significant challenges remain. He expressed gratitude to President Tinubu for the warm hospitality and excellent facilities provided for the meeting.
It is to be recognized that so much more can be done if adequate resources are provided. This is why the items on the financial matters are of crucial importance. For now 6 consecutive years, the community levy remittances from the member states have been declining. This year, as of 30 October, the community institutions received only 40% of the approved funds from the community levy, thereby hindering the implementation of the community work program.
Records show that trade within the region currently stands at a low 12 to 13%, significantly trailing behind other parts of the world. The session underscored the urgent need for actionable steps to strengthen economic ties across the region, aiming to achieve sustainable development and greater prosperity for ECOWAS member states. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, Usman Umar reporting from Abuja.
As a reminder, the 93rd Ordinary Session of the ECOWAS Council of Ministers followed the 53rd Mediation and Security Council on Wednesday, when the fight against terrorism and the transitional government agenda in Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger were discussed. The trio under the Alliance of Sahel State AES are also approaching their deadline of January 2025 to renounce their membership with the regional bloc. This and more will be discussed in the second half of the news with our guest, Bram Posthumus, a security journalist and analyst in the Sahel. Meanwhile, in Ghana, analysts are expressing mixed reactions to the new composition of parliament in the aftermath of the December 7 elections. The results point to an overwhelming majority given to the opposition National Democratic Congress (NDC), which so far has about 185 seats out of the 276 seats in parliament. Whereas some analysts believe that this is subject to abuse and will make accountability difficult, others say there is no cause for alarm, arguing that the numbers reflect the will of the people. From Accra, Nadiri Tete reports.
On December 7, 2024, Ghanaians went to the polls to elect a president and members of parliament. The outcome was an overwhelming majority given to the opposition National Democratic Congress, the NDC, that so far has about 185 seats out of the 270 seats in parliament, crossing the 184 seat mark needed to hold 2/3 of parliament. But while the NDC has promised not to abuse its dominance of parliament, Executive Director of the Africa Center for Parliamentary Affairs, Dr. Rashid Rahman, says the high attrition of experienced members capable of holding the government to account makes the numbers tally a bit worrisome.
When it comes to holding the government to account, all over the world, the majority of cases, that is the business of the opposition. It's very difficult to get members of the ruling party to be very active in holding their own to account. I just hope that we are going to see something different here.
But senior political science lecturer at the University of Ghana, Dr. Kwame Asasante, has downplayed the concerns, arguing the numbers reflect the will of the people. He says the onus lies on the citizenry to police the impending 9th Parliament.
Why are we worried? What you see in Parliament in terms of representation is the expression of the people's desire. I'm not sure we have any power to tell voters that when you are voting, think about Parliament, the people who are put in there so that you don't get absolute majority and all that. It's a function of so many things. There's nothing wrong with the way Ghanaians voted. That is how they want to express themselves. Nobody can legislate against that. What we have to do is that we have to also police Parliament so that they will do the needful, that they will not take us for a ride.
For WADR, Nadiri Tete, Accra.
Senegal's parliament will soon meet to discuss the state budget, according to Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko during the Council of Ministers meeting on Wednesday. The head of the Senegalese government reminded his ministers of the need to rationalize spending once the budget has been adopted by Parliament. Sonko insisted on good governance of public finances and called on his ministers to focus more on projects with a strong economic and social impact. For economists, sectors such as education, agriculture, and hydrocarbons remain priorities to better meet the needs of the population. An economist and researcher at the Sheikh Anta Diop University of Dakar, Professor Suleiman Keita, provides some analysis.
Rationalizing expenses means efficiently reorganizing them. What does this mean? Spending is a mechanism that enables substantial, exponential increases in the objectives set by the public authorities. Now, this means that any expenditure that is not productive, the state or at least the public authorities must not get involved because we are in a rationalization phase. There are 3 sectors, but the priority is education. This should be a priority sector in which the state should provide sufficient resources to enable young people to stay in school today. And then now to have the quality human resources they need to meet the needs of tomorrow's new projects, the new benchmarks that the state is in the process of setting up. Secondly, the agricultural sector. The priority today is to rationalize dependence, to be able to inject money into this sector to achieve what we call food independence. We have also discovered oil, and that's a very good thing, but we need to invest in research and innovation to enable the state to take control of the healthcare sector. Today, healthcare sector is a sector of the economy undergoing a complete transformation. Investing in this sector using resources freed up in other sectors would be a very good move.
Investir dans ce secteur-là, en tout cas, à partir des ressources qui sont dégagées dans les autres secteurs, ça serait une très bonne chose.
Professor Suleiman Keita, an economist and researcher at the Sheikh Anta Diop University, Dakar.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
We're live on Facebook and YouTube at WADR. Let's take you now to Mali, where Prime Minister General Abdoulaye Maiga went to the press house on Thursday, where he met with several journalist organizations. An opportunity for press organizations to discuss the difficulties faced by journalists in carrying out their profession. These organizations are demanding that the state create special aid for the press. Here is a report filed in by our Bamako correspondent Aliyu Cham and voiced by Christopher Ticho.
During the meeting, the press highlighted several concerns, including the protection of journalists in the exercise of their profession, freedom of expression, and the closure of media outlets. The latest case is the withdrawal of the license of the private television channel Joliba TV News. The head of the press house has also publicly apologized to the Burkinabe authority who filed a complaint against the channel. Mediations are continuing for the reopening of the media. Banjou Gudante is the president of the Mali Press House.
What is convenient to call the Joliba affair, the information we have received in recent hours from the media, from Joliba TV News, is a happy omen. I present on behalf of the House of the Press of Mali our apologies to the Burkinabe authorities and to a part of the Burkinabe opinion that will be prosecuted for statements made on Joliba TV News.
The press house also called for the creation of a fund for the press, many of whose companies are experiencing economic difficulties.
Our time with you, the conditions of the creation of Nespace Mediatique Asseni favors freedom of expression and has special consequences for the Malian press.
Prime Minister General Abdoulaye Maiga said he had taken note of the press concerns without being able to make any commitments. As a reminder, when they came to power, the military stopped paying aid to the press, which amounts to more than 600 million CFA francs.
Christopher Ticho, that report filed in by WADR's Aliyu Cham in Bamako. Staying in the Sahel, the Nigerian junta has filed a complaint against a French media shortly after suspending the BBC for 3 months. The suit against Radio France International, RFI, was announced on Thursday during the Council of Ministers. In a press release, the Nigerian government accuses RFI of leading a vast campaign of disinformation aimed at setting populations against each other and inciting massacre and genocide. According to the authorities, the French media outlet is using, and I quote, stateless persons as relays to broadcast content aimed at destabilizing the country. As a reminder, RFI and France 24 have been suspended since August 2023 by the military after the coup d'etat against President Mohamed Bazoum. Away from the Sahel, to promote accountability and enforce transparency, President Joseph Boakai of Liberia has led the signing of the Code of Conduct to target the performance of government officials. The signing, which was done on Wednesday this week, is a significant step in promoting transparency and accountability through the signing of the Code of Conduct and Performance Management and Compliance System contracts by heads of government, ministries, departments, and agencies. From Monrovia, Grace Joshua completes the story.
According to President Boakai, the initiative set clear performance targets for institutions in making a decisive move towards a more result-driven government. In his keynote address at the ceremony, President Boakai emphasized the importance of the reform as a cornerstone of his administration commitment to ethical leadership and efficient public service.
It is a moment that reflects our collective ambition to build a more accountable, transparent, and a result-driven government. It is important to note that during today's ceremony, heads of government institutions will also be signing and affirming their commitment to the Code of Conduct, an important instrument to promote good governance. When this government was ushered in, we made it abundantly clear to the Liberian people and the world that our administration will not be defined as business as usual, and we meant it. This is why we expect nothing less from the ministers and heads of agencies who are here to sign performance contracts and the Code of Conduct, and others to do so later.
The system is designed to ensure that ministries, agencies, and commission are held accountable for achieving their mandate and effectively serving the public. For West Africa Democracy Radio, I'm Grace Joshua in Monrovia.
You are listening to Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM Dakar, Senegal, and online on wadr.org. Here's a reminder of our top stories. President Bola Tinubu, ECOWAS chairperson, called for intensified efforts to drive the organization's economic integration agenda. Analysts in Ghana express mixed reactions to the new composition of the country's parliament. The Nigerian junta enters the legal battle with an international media for allegedly inciting genocide in the country. Still ahead in the news, WADR signs a partnership agreement with Tostan to empower communities through quality radio information. A new report on illicit financial flows in Africa says that the continent loses $90 billion every year. We also have the guest interview and sports news. Please stay with us.
Fresh and breaking news all the time. Hear it first as the news breaks, only on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Many thanks for staying with us. And now to some partnership news. Your darling FM station, West Africa Democracy Radio, and Tostan at the start of the week signed a partnership agreement to both continue the strengthening of the capabilities of communities while harnessing the power and impact of radio to achieve developmental targets. Emoradet tells us more.
Tostan, an international non-governmental organization that works in West Africa, is now a partner of WADR. In separate interviews, Tostan's Director of Partnership, Karina Njaye, expressed delight in the new partnership with WADR, which she says will further advance their work through advocacy, leveraging on the power of radio.
We are very honored to be here today to sign the MOU in order to help some of our communications coverage, given the synergy between WADR and Tostan in terms of medium of communication, intention of communication. We work with very rural communities in West Africa, and radio is one of the main streams of communication, but also of organized diffusion. So not everybody is able to attend our programs, but everybody can have access to the radio. And historically, for the past 30-something years, we have used the radio as a medium of communication, of empowerment, of community building, and of knowledge management.
For our part, WADR station manager, Mrs. Agnes John Tomasi, welcomed this initiative and reaffirmed her commitment to collaborate with Tostan to ensure better living conditions for communities. According to Mrs. Tomasi, the partnership with Tostan highlights the importance of the work being done by WADR.
I think this is a very important milestone. This year, we are happy to have signed different types of partnerships, and this one, that Tostan came to the office and we did the official signing together, is really another milestone. It is an honor for us also, because looking at it, WADR here, we have been trying, we have been striving. As a terrestrial radio, we have also moved on to become hybrid. In order to serve our different listeners, our different audiences, and our different target groups. The staff here in Dakar are doing wonderfully well. Sometimes these kinds of partnerships, these kinds of outreach, Tostan coming out to us to say, can we work together? It's like a booster to our work.
WADR and Tostan share similar mandates targeting the well-being of communities while valuing core principles such as dialogue, information sharing, integrity, and sustainability.
Emoradet with that report. To financial news, the United Nations Commission for Africa, ECA, has said that Africa's vast resources from gold and diamonds to fertile land and solar energy have too often enriched a privileged minority, local and foreign, while leaving aside the majority of Africans. This was contained in a statement released on Thursday while deploring the weight of illicit financial flows in Africa. The ECA Declaration on Illicit Financial Flows follows a series of discussions focused on practical solutions to transform Africa's wealth into prosperity for its people at the Africa Economic Conference held in Gaborone, Botswana.
Politics,
analysis on major news,
social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
Our guest this afternoon is Bram Posthumous, a journalist with vast knowledge of the Central Sahel region. He joins the discussion on the backdrop of the 53rd ECOWAS Mediation and Security Council held in Abuja, Nigeria this week. During the mini-summit, the security and political situations of the countries of the Sahel, namely Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger, came to the fore, in addition to the fast approaching deadline to exit the regional body. Speaking to Christopher Ticho, Bram describes the balance between the fight against terrorism and the call for these countries to return to constitutional order.
The existence of terrorism in these three countries, Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger, is the perfect excuse for these three military juntas to maintain themselves in power. Their actions suggest to us that they have little interest in actually ending the scourge of terrorism, because that would eliminate their raison d'etre, if you like. So the fight against terrorism will always be there as an excuse to maintain themselves in power and therefore ignore any call for an end to the transition. And of course, the actual motive for ignoring an end to the transition for all these three juntas is extremely simple. They want to maintain themselves in power, and as long as terrorism exists, they can use that as an excuse, which is why, for instance, the coastal states bordering Burkina Faso have complained endlessly about the absence of the Burkinabe army on its side of the border, and indicating a lack of seriousness in actually confronting the problem and ending it.
Are the mechanisms present and the climate suitable for the return to civilian rule in these countries?
The shortest answer to that question is no. No mechanisms have been put in place. Things like having a functioning voters register and a body overseeing the elections. The only one that did that is Mali, but then it's been basically unemployed ever since. So there is an authority to oversee elections in Mali put in place by the junta, but it's actually not working. There is even a budget. The elections have been budgeted for in 2025, but nobody seriously believes that these will take place. The suitable climate probably refers to the lack of security and the presence of terrorism. And again, that will continue to be used as an excuse to make sure that there is no return to civilian rule in any of these three countries, because it hides the true motive, which is to maintain the juntas in power.
What will be the major indicators of AES member countries' readiness to end the transition?
The first indicator would be the existence of an independent overseeing elections body. Second would be a budget. And third would be the existence of reliable voters registers, which is always a complicated exercise, especially in a country that has so many internally displaced people or refugees, and all three are suffering from this problem. And of course, the fourth indicator would be the existence of candidates and possibly, but not necessarily, political parties to participate in these elections. So these would be the major indicators that there is a readiness to end the transition, and there is no evidence that any of these actually exist and or function.
Will ending the transition be a means to end the security crisis in the Sahelian countries? If not, how can the armies work collaboratively with a democratic regime to improve security without further coups?
It seems that the evidence suggests that neither a civilian government nor a transition government has been able to put an end to the security crisis. And the reason is not their character, apart from the fact that, for instance, in the case of Niger, we've had many a time when there was basically a revolving door against military rule and civilian rule. And arguably, you could say the same about the other two countries, although the circumstances differ a little bit. But the nature of the government in place, military, transition, civilian, doesn't really address the fundamental issue at stake in the security crisis, which is that all of these governments so far have been axing their approach on a purely military approach, and it is the military approach that has been a complete failure. You do need a holistic solution, and you need to address this issue not in only purely military terms, but in fact in socio-economic terms, because at the heart of this whole issue lies the severe marginalization of the communities that have become a prey for these insurgents, jihadists, rebels, whatever you want to call them.
Bram Postumus is a journalist with vast knowledge of the Central Sahel region. Up next is sports news with Sankule Janko.
Hello there, welcome and thank you for joining us. Nigeria International Ademola Lookman is leading the charge for the CAF FIFA Player of the Year. Organizers have revealed full list of 5 nominees ahead of the ceremony in Marrakesh on Monday. It adds to the suspense in the evening what has been one of the most closely fought contests in history of the awards, with 5 outstanding candidates hoping to write their names into the rich history of football on the continent, according to CAF official website. The CAF 2024 awards ceremony takes place at the Palais des Congrès in Marrakesh, Morocco on Monday. The top 5 list players include Simon Adingra of Cote d'Ivoire and Brighton Hove Albion, England. The winger Adingra was a key figure for Cote d'Ivoire in their roller coaster run to 2023 Africa Cup of Nations title on home soil in February. Another player is Sehu Gracie of Guinea, who scored a remarkable 30 goals in as many games for Germany Bundesliga side Stuttgart in the 2023-24 season, and has carried on that form following a move to Borussia Dortmund for a new campaign. Achraf Hakimi of Morocco has long been one of the most consistent right backs in European football and had an excellent year for Paris Saint-Germain, who helped win a 3rd French league title in a row last season. Ronwen Williams of South Africa, goalkeeper Williams' spectacular penalty saves at the CAF Africa Cup of Nations Cote d'Ivoire 2023 will live long in the memory as he captained South Africa to bronze medal. And Buki's favorite Ademola Lookman is also on the list. Lookman has been in the form of his life in 2024, helping turn his Italian Serie A side Atalanta into a title contenders and taking them to UEFA Europa League trophy win, a first major piece of silverware for the club in 61 years. That's it for sports. It's back to you.
Sports was brought to you by Sankule Janko. And with that, we've come to the end of this edition of Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM, Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Mustafa Sek and Maujo Juf for the technical support. Do interact with us via social media platforms, X, Instagram at WADR News, on Facebook, WADR English Service, and stream live on WADR.org. Join Esli Jeju at the top of the hour of 1 p.m. for the second edition of our comprehensive news packet in French and Fushifu. I'm Abdullah Hassan. Good afternoon.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM, Newmi FM 94.0,
Hilltop Radio 104.7 FM,
and Veritas Radio 102.9 in Banjul, the Gambia. We also appreciate our listeners in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM, Lofa County,
Radio Kagama 94.5 FM, Niba County, DCN Radio 91.3 FM, Riverside County.